There's a verbal paralysis that afflicts the Hindu consciousness when it comes time for us to speak, to advocate for ourselves. This is not a problem that only affects Hindus living in India. I see it here in Canada. I see it in the birthplace of my parents, the small island of Trinidad and Tobago. I see it in the Hindus from Guyana, the country where my wife's parents are from. It's a condition that affects Hindus living all over the world, whether it be in the US, Europe, UK, wherever Hindus have settled. I was once afflicted with this, so I know what it's like. It's an internal struggle that kicks up when we know we should be saying something, but we stop. It's not anything outside, it's not anyone, but something stops us. Even when we see Hindus in Bangladesh fighting for their lives, we find it hard to speak. Don't get me wrong, not everyone is like this, but with Hindus numbering 1.2 billion worldwide, we should have been doing much better. And you know what the Hindus in Bangladesh are asking for? It's not fancy jobs, it's not an increase in their political power. The ask was actually quite basic. They were asking for the right to live. We need to unpack the reasons why Hindus seem to lose their voice when it comes to their own advocacy. I have some thoughts that I'm going to share with you, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I care enough to speak up. But before we get to that, let's look into a little bit of the history of Bangladesh and why this violence targeted towards Hindus is not anything new. On August 5th, 2024, Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, resigned her position and fled the country after a massive uprising against her government. After the elation of victory, the stark reality started to hit home for the Hindu population in Bangladesh. With Sheikh Hasina gone, Hindus started to be attacked. Hindu temples were vandalized. Reports came out that women were being raped. And while Hindus continued to bear the brunt of the majority of these attacks, Christians and Buddhists are also facing the same fate. But what's the history of this? India's partition in 1947 created two nations, India and what's now known as Pakistan. But previously, Pakistan was divided into West and East Pakistan. West Pakistan being what we currently know today as Pakistan, and East Pakistan being present-day Bangladesh. The problem is, Bangladesh was predominantly a Bengali community with distinct cultural and economic grievances, and it felt marginalized by the dominant West Pakistan. Over the decades since partition, tensions escalated. In 1970, elections brought the Awami League to power with a mandate to separate. This did not go down well, and Pakistan's military launched Operation Searchlight in 1971, a brutal crackdown on East Pakistanis. Mass killings, rape, and a refugee crisis ensued as millions fled India. India did intervene in late 1971 to protect its border and support the Bangladeshi struggle. After a swift war, Pakistan surrendered, and Bangladesh was born on December 16, 1971. Let's talk some numbers. Some historians have placed the total death at 3 million Bengalis, the vast majority being Hindus who were targeted. Some estimate that anywhere between 200,000 and 400,000 women were raped. The US also had a role in this. In a groundbreaking book, The Blood Telegram by Gary Bass, a professor of politics at Princeton, he detailed the events surrounding the 1971 Bangladesh genocide and the role the US government had in this crisis. The book reveals how US President Richard Nixon and his national security advisor Henry Kissinger secretly supported Pakistan despite the atrocities that were happening. Their primary motive was to use Pakistan as a counterbalance to India and to facilitate diplomatic relations with China. The title of this book refers to a cable sent by Archer Blood, the U.S. Consul General in Dhaka, to Washington, detailing the horrific violence he witnessed and pleading for intervention. This cable was largely ignored by the Nixon administration, and the book exposes how U.S. foreign policy disregarded human life in pursuit of their own interests. So knowing all of this, what was your reaction to the news of Hindus being targeted in Bangladesh in 2024? A few years ago. But I think talking about this story helps to paint a broader picture of Hindu suffering globally, where we as Hindus know this is happening, but we can't seem to find our voices to talk about it. Wismar was a bauxite mining community situated by the Demerara River, about 90 kilometers south of the capital of Georgetown, in what is now known as modern-day Linden, Guyana. Its population of 18,000 consisted mostly of Africans, 3,000 Indians, the majority being Hindu, and a handful of other ethnicities. Over a 4-day period in May of 1964, racial violence erupted as Africans drove Indians out of the area with multiple counts of arsons, beatings, rapes, and murders. Practically all 3,000 Indians, men, women, and children, were forced to flee for their lives to Georgetown, carrying whatever meager possessions they were able to grab. The official Wismar report summarizes that racial violence took place on the 25th of May 1964 by Africans against the minority East Indian population residing in Wismar. In the course of these attacks, a number of Indians were murdered, scores of others brutally beaten and injured, and women and girls publicly raped. These violent acts were accompanied by large-scale arson, which saw the destruction of more than 200 houses and business places owned by Indians. So let me ask you this question again. When these Indians were attacked, who were largely Hindu, who advocated for them? I guess you can make the excuse that in 1964, social media didn't exist, so no one really knew what was happening. But in the case of today, Bangladesh in 2024, we can see, we can read, and we can hear what is happening. We have first-hand accounts of the atrocities, but yet, what causes the average Hindu to remain silent? The trauma that Hindus have gone through over the years has caused us to internalize a type of shame in trying to hide our Hindu identity. We don't want to rock the boat. Years and years of colonization has wreaked havoc on our collective Hindu psyche. We need to fight through this. We need to stand up. And we have to advocate for our right to live. The Kashmiri Pandits fled from their ancestral homelands in the Kashmir Valley during the early 1990s due to increasing violence and targeted persecution by militant groups. To this day, who has advocated for them? They still live in exile. I'm not looking to blame the media. Yes, for sure, they had their part to play. But this is an issue for Hindus to address, and we need to change. This verbal paralysis that inflicts us when we see our own brothers and sisters being attacked, it needs to change. So what do we need to do? Number one, understand that a Hindu is a Hindu is a Hindu, no matter where we live in the world. The divides that we create based on geography or language, they need to be put to an end. The suffering of Bangladeshi Hindus is the suffering of all Hindus. Number two, we need to demand more from our religious leaders. Puja, satsang, and katha are all important in order to build up your Hindu identity, but it can't stop there. All the knowledge in the world isn't good enough if you can't put it into practice what you have learned. Didn't Arjuna have to fight on the battlefield? Are you the weak Hindu that wants to run away from this battlefield? No, we have to stand up. We just can't sing and pray. We have to act. Number 3, find advocacy groups and volunteer. The Coalition of Hindus of North America, CONA, are at the forefront of advocacy here in Canada and the US. They need our support. The Hindu American Foundation is also leading the charge by speaking to lawmakers and galvanizing support in the US. What are the Hindus in India doing? Let me know in the comments below. The next thing we have to do is educate ourselves on the history of Hindu persecution. I think one of the reasons why Hindus are so hesitant to speak up is we ourselves don't know our own history. I've seen it with my own eyes within my own community, with the Wismar massacre being one such example. Finally, look in the mirror and ask yourself, does being Hindu add value to my life? Because if it does, then it's worth fighting for. Don't you think Hindus deserve to live?